Hello and welcome to the Dare Differentiate live show. The purpose of the show is to help you rise up, raise your standards, and reach your next level. Through weekly live trainings and guest interviews, my goal is to help you gain clarity, confidence, and a competitive edge. Whether you're tuning in live or watching the replay, I am so delighted that you're here. Let me know where you are from. So I'm your host, Diana YK Chan. I'm the founder of My Marketability, where I work with ambitious professionals, leaders, and executives to find a meaningful career, navigate change, and differentiate as top talent to get hired and earn more. All right, guys, today is a special episode. It's Chinese New Year. I want to wish you a happy Lunar New Year. Sending you much best wishes of wishing you abundance of opportunities. I want to wish you to be brave and being true to who you are, and wishing you to create a life that you love and to chase your dreams. And lastly, also, I want to wish you to really dare to differentiate with confidence and to make an impact in this world. So I'm curious to hear from you guys. How's 2021 so far? Right? If you're looking to reset your new year, today's the opportunity since it's a Chinese New Year. Type in hashtag reset if you're looking to reset the new year with us here, and let me know what's your word of the year. My word of the year is transformation. Okay, so today I have my special guest, Simeon Wong, here to share with us his career journey of how he made multiple career pivots in consulting and into industry and to now running his career coaching business. So before I dive in to introduce him, I want you to type into the chat room to type in hashtag go Simeon. He's at backstage. He can see the chat room here. So I just want to raise that vibration energy up first. Okay. So some housekeeping here. Replays will be available. You can catch it on my YouTube channel. I will add timestamps later on so that you can watch it at certain times there. And also want to encourage you throughout to click like and comment anytime. Share with us your thoughts, your key learnings, and give us your favorite emojis as well. And then the other thing is to show us your appreciation. I love to raise this vibration energy up. Click like anytime and share your kind words there. Okay. Guys, the reason why I do this is really I also want to help people to feel more connected in this virtual world today. Even though typically on Chinese New Year, I take the day off, but I'm just so excited today to be with all of you here to really to connect with all of you. So before we dive in, I thought I would share with you some quick wins from my clients, some progress wins. It's been really busy over here with my client in terms of interview prep. I have 4 of them. One of them who's been going through 3 interviews in pharmaceuticals in sales and learning, just finished her case interview yesterday. Another client going through 3 internal roles at a manager level, next level at a bank. Just finished her case interview and going through a series of interviews today as well. And then I have another client who's a finalist candidate meeting an executive team in the marketing role as well. So things are happening there. Okay, so are you guys excited to welcome our guest speaker? Okay, Simeon Wong. Simeon is an executive career coach at elevate.strategy, where he helps professionals find a fulfilling career grounded in their unique skills, capabilities, and passion. Growing up, he wanted to be an actor, doctor, and CEO. He has over 2 decades of global corporate strategy experience in senior management consulting roles at Deloitte, PwC Consulting, Accenture, and in leadership positions at multi-billion-dollar top-tier companies in telecommunications, pharmaceutical, and consumer packaged goods. So he's here to talk to us today of how he made his career pivots, and will also teach you how to define your competitive edge to stand out as top talent. Are you guys ready to welcome him to the stage? Let's give a round of applause and welcome and say go, Simeon. Okay. Hi, Simeon. Happy Chinese New Year.
Happy Chinese New Year. My goodness, it is the Lunar New Year already. It's 2021.
It is. I have to say,
half of the world.
恭喜发财, eh?
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Oh my goodness. I'm so excited to have you here today. Thank you so much for being here with us. It's such a pleasure. I know we just met last year in December when you came to my summit, and then you wrote to me afterwards, right?
That's right. It was excellent. Yeah, it was great. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I love how I'm connecting with so many coaches right now. And so thank you so much for being here. So I'm going to dive right in because it's Chinese New Year today. I want to ask you the first question, like, What was your favorite Chinese New Year childhood memory in Hong Kong? I know you were born here in Canada and then you moved back to Hong Kong when you were like 12.
Yeah. My favorite memory was there was one Chinese New Year where a couple of high school friends and I, we stayed up all night and we basically we watched 3 movies at a local theater, and 2 hours each, so 6 hour, marathon of Chinese movies. And we didn't sleep at all. We got up in the morning, kind of, went for breakfast and stuff like that. So, a lot of it has to do with my friends, basically, my high school buddies and stuff like that. So, there's several of them, right? But that's probably one of the most memorable ones. It's kind of crazy night that was that.
Oh,
How about
that's
you?
awesome.
What about you?
You know what? One of my memory was I remember because I have a godparents and I would always go over to their place to, just to help them out. I really, one of my favorite memory was actually stuffing money into like the red envelopes. I was the one responsible for counting all the money and putting all the money in for them.
Oh no.
I loved it. I loved it so much. They trusted me so much. So I was their little helper. And from there, I would always get a lot of red envelopes from a lot of the elderlies and, the relatives and all that. So that's actually one of my favorite memory. I wonder if there were any things that you were not allowed to do on Chinese New Year that bugged you.
Oh, no. My parents, and I hope they don't play, but they were pretty they were pretty cool. They were cool about it. We're not a very traditional family, so the fact that you have red packets there is extremely impressive. But they're really,
Yeah.
it was more like, stay safe, get home safely, don't drink too much, which I really wasn't too much into anyway. So no, we just had like lean go, we had like, typical
Yeah.
things. So yeah, we
Yeah.
relaxed. We're pretty, yeah.
Oh, my side, I'll tell you, like very, very strict. So, simple things like wearing red on Chinese New Year Day, like wearing red was important to avoid wearing black. The other one that I was quite rebellious to follow was to no washing your hair on Chinese New Year Day,
Really?
because
Okay.
that would signal like, washing away the good luck and all that. But I still, secretly do that on Chinese New Year Day because I just like to have be all dressed up there. But little
Yeah.
things like that, right? We weren't allowed to say certain, words that had a meaning of like bad luck and stuff.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
follow those there.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
No, my hair was fine.
We have such a great audience here. Oh, I see. Oh, Amin typed in Chinese. Something Philo Aulin Daiga. Oh my goodness, Amin, you speak like 3 languages. You speak French. And
Yeah.
I like you type in
Wow.
Chinese. That's amazing. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Awesome. Oh my goodness. Look, so many people are cheering for you, Simeon. Go Simeon here. Amazing.
Perfect.
Amazing. So I'm going to start with another question here is why did you become a career coach? What's really fulfilling about it? Who are your ideal clients?
Yeah, I started off career coaching just informally for, younger people who are coming out of school, right? So I come from a consulting background, and in management consulting, there's this, sort of stated fact that you have to mentor people who are coming in. So I had a lot of experience working with younger folks. So when I left corporate to start Elevate, that was what I thought my market was going to be, was spending a lot of time with young professionals in that sense. But I think, what kind of veered towards was because of my work experience, it made a lot more sense to mentor and coach more executive people, which is what I'm doing right now. To your question about what's fulfilling about it, I mean, everything is fulfilling, absolutely. From, you must get a lot of calls as well, Diana, right now about, folks who are kind of mentally kind of lacking confidence because even as a very, very seasoned executive, they need a lot of support as far as getting them back on track, right? So
Mhm.
what's fulfilling about that is just the honor for them to share with me their story, and then for me to listen and kind of really try to process that and put myself in their shoes, and then maybe offer them some advice. And if they become clients of mine, that's great. We have a long-term relationship and kind of usher them into a role or something like that. So everything is fulfilling about that. I'm sure you can relate, Dinah. So
Yeah.
yeah, I love people. I think at the end of the day, I love people more than I love projects. I've always said that, which is funny. I don't like projects as much as I like people. That's where I am today.
That's amazing to hear. You know what, you're right. Like being a coach, you have to have a passion for people. You have to care about them. You have to care about them wanting to grow and develop. Like that's really what's fulfilling about it. It's for me, it's seeing that transformation for them to go after their dreams and goals, and seeing that transformation, how they become more confident about themselves.
Yeah. And I think at the end of the day, it's recognizing that you are sort of an enabler, you're a catalyst for them for a chemical reaction to happen, right? So, it's like if you're a high school teacher and you see your students becoming doctors and lawyers and successful people, if you don't have the right personality, it's easy for them to usurp you, kind of like, overshadow you, kind of feel like, oh, I wish I were them. Right. But you've got to be confident that your calling is to help, is to enable. So that's kind of what brings joy. Right. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's move into your career transition story, and then we'll move into your talk about how to define your competitive edge. So let's start off with, if you're going to walk us through your career transition journey, what were the highs and lows? What were the key lessons learned? And I know you've had quite a journey, I would say. I have to say, like, your background I look at is very fascinating. Really rare have I seen people be able to pivot into like at least those 5 different industries, going back from corporate and consulting. So we'd love to hear from a little of that, the journey there.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I started off in high school. I really loved the arts, and I loved drama specifically. So when I went into university, I immediately kind of gravitated towards, I did some science courses for my parents' sake, right? But I really wanted to be an actor. So I enrolled in the acting program at a university here in Toronto. And for 2 years, I was in acting. I was trying to train to be a stage actor, and, doing monologues and soliloquies and kind of improv and everything that was exciting about that. And so, but during my second year, I realized that I really wasn't a really good actor, and as much so, I needed to kind of think about, okay, what's next for me, right? So, being part of sort of the science community of, if you're Asian, you kind of have this bit of a stereotype that, your parents expect that from you. So part of me was thinking, okay, maybe this is a time for redemption, right? So I could go into an area where they were comfortable with. So I went to sciences, and I switched over to pre-med and physiology, and I even went so far as to do a master's. So I did a master's at the Hospital for Sick Children in Toronto, and for 2 years I was engrossed in like lab work and stuff like that, and focused on a specific illness. And at that point, I kind of think, okay, maybe I should go and become a doctor and try to make sense that way, or become a PhD, a professor. But that didn't work out because my marks weren't high enough. And so, I thought, okay, what's going on here, right? I've invested so many years now into acting and science, and medical school just wasn't going to happen. So then I didn't have a lot of options. And at this point, I thought, well, business is pretty interesting. I've, had a lot of friends who are in commerce. And so I thought maybe I would give that a try and see, what it's all about. Right. I had taken like one economics course, and it was not fun at all. But I found an MBA program that accepted students who had not had a lot of work experience. So I went to do my MBA. And during those 2 years, I actually loved it a lot. I loved the rigor behind finance and some of the organizational behavior kinds of things. And, we had a lot of speakers coming in talking about kind of what they do. And one of them I remember was a career coach, and I had no idea who they were at the beginning. But anyway, fast forward. So after business school, I really loved to do case competitions. And that was a highlight of mine that really I was good at doing, and I worked well with the teams. So I did a lot of that. And this, when I graduated from business school, I was fortunate enough to be taken in by Deloitte Consulting in their strategy and operations team. And so I'm a kind of a more strategic person than I am a tactical person by nature. So I really enjoyed that consulting experience, right? And so any of you who've been in consulting, Diana, yourself, you relate that, is you get a chance to meet a lot of different clients from all kinds of backgrounds and stuff like that, right? So from then on, so for the next 20 years, I was in business. I did a couple of years of consulting. Then I moved into industry. I was at Rogers Communications, the companies that primarily are Canadian, but they're large companies. And in various places, I was doing strategy and operations work, so back and forth. But I always thought, you know what, I love the people component of consulting, and I love the excitement of meeting people and doing new projects. So I always had in mind to go back to consulting after going into industry, but I didn't know
Yeah.
how difficult that would be, right? So, but fortunately enough, then eventually I went to PwC Consulting and helped them with some of their work there. And for the next 5 years, I was in consulting. So my last major role was in Accenture as a senior manager. I was on a partner track. So the next step up would have been a partner or managing director at Accenture. But I really did a lot of reflection around that time, and I'd really taken a lot to observing a lot of the leadership aspects of what kinds of leaders are successful, what kinds of leaders are good, one that are not as successful or not as effective. And I started thinking, how do these people develop their careers, and where do they pick up skills, and how do they think of themselves, right? What's the confidence that they actually carry? Um, and I remember, speaking with one partner. We were on a project together. I was sitting in the car with him on the east coast of Canada, and I was still young then. I asked him, so how do you balance between work life and work-life balance? And he looked at me and he goes, I don't balance. I basically, family comes second. When we got married, I told my wife that she understands, and work is what I do. And I just thought, well, I didn't give me at least some sort of like generic textbook answer, right? But it scared me that way. So uh,
Right.
by the time I decided that, you know what, let's give this a shot to leave corporate, which was, as you know, it's a salaried role, right? Very stable kind of a thing. And to jump
Hmm.
into the water to start something like Elevate, my career coaching business, I had already at that point been so motivated to try this out, right? So
Yeah.
that was about 2 years ago now, in April of 2019. So it's been a great ride since, right? So
Yeah.
we'll talk about that a little bit later about my TED talk. But essentially, really, if you look at the stream of my career, there are certain things that are common, and I think that's what is true for everybody. There are threads of excitement and passion that sometimes we just need to follow that, right? So
I love that. That's a good learning here. Like, find that common thread. If you guys want to type in common thread, hashtag common thread, to identify those themes and patterns that you have. And I'm curious to hear from the audience as well. If you guys want to type in, if you are considering a career pivot, type in hashtag career pivot. And I'm curious to hear from you guys, from what to what, right? Like, if you look at Simeon going from his dream of acting to doctor to business, I'm curious to hear from you guys. Are you looking to make that significant change here, and share us with us as well? But one of the key lessons I'm hearing is finding that common thread and that common pattern. Yesterday, I was listening to another show with Kamara. The other speaker, talked about those breadcrumbs. Those breadcrumbs becomes clues as well of what you
right,
can do there, right?
right, for
So
sure.
that's a great lesson in there. I'm curious to hear from you. Were there any challenges climbing the corporate ladder? Like, did you face the bamboo ceiling? For those who aren't aware what bamboo ceiling means, it's like, for those who are like Asians working in I guess, a Western culture, like, did we face those, I guess, biases, or the challenges as we try to climb the corporate ladder there?
I can't say that I did. I was fortunate that the three major firms that I was a part of had a great culture in that they really tried to foster anyone who is able to do something good, right? Um, so some people that I've met would say that there is. Uh, I was just maybe fortunate to be able to kind of work with some really great people. I think sometimes we kind of maybe box ourselves in a little bit, and we may say that there is a bamboo ceiling, and that kind of discourages us from really pushing forward and ahead. But I try to be a little bit glass full, right? Which is to say, there's only a bamboo ceiling if you allow that to happen. So I never really did, but I think that's a really great question. And bamboo ceilings sometimes can factor into passion, because you might have an excitement for something, but because you feel that you've been inhibited from progressing, you may just drop that and say, you know what, that's not for me. I'm not good at that, clearly, because people are pulling me back. So, but I would just encourage everybody, your listeners, to if something is there that you feel that is sort of impeding your career, really try to break through that if you can. And part of it starts with your own perception of yourself, right? If you're
Mm,
confident and you present yourself that way, I mean, I talk a lot about your value. If you present yourself your value, no one can push back on what value you bring to the table if you've got facts to back that up, right?
yeah.
So yeah, I've been fortunate enough not to, but again, I would say some people obviously do, but
Yeah.
start with yourself first and try to kind of move through that. Yeah,
Yeah, I love that advice because it's going back to when you are self aware, it gives you greater confidence and clarity and to promote yourself more effectively as well.
right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Knowing your strengths and weaknesses. Absolutely. That's good to hear that. Oh, so I see Melanie's here. Mhm.
Have you had
Yeah.
that experience before? I know you've had
I
that
have
kind of.
for me, it's not the bamboo ceiling. I think for me, is I have faced challenges where I didn't get certain opportunities because of being Chinese. I found out not like through the grapevine of other people. I have faced that because of my skin color, and so that does
Wow.
frustrate me as well. It does in terms
Right.
of that. But I've also learned to really step up for myself or even carve my own path to not be afraid to speak up as well. And I think this is why I'm so passionate about what I do in terms of helping people to recognize their own value, to believe in their value, and to
Right.
voice their value. That's something, a common theme right now for me that I'm constantly speaking up to help people with that, because if you don't believe in yourself, no one else will. No one else will do it for you.
Right.
Right. So you got to do it for
Exactly.
yourself first. And
That's
that
right.
all starts with the self-awareness work.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
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 Yeah. Yeah. So my next question is around, did you talk about the story? I know for those who are looking to really make that pivot, like how did you really make those multiple pivots successfully? If you can give some advice, and for context here, right, from healthcare and pharma to consulting. So this was, I guess, after your MBA, and then you moved into CPG, and then to telecommunications, and then retail, and then back to consulting. What were those strategies or tips you have for those?
I think several things. Number one is you have to be brave and you have to feel that you can do anything. And what I mean by that is, every single point in the juncture of my pivot, I never felt that I could do it. I just felt that number one is, they say fake it till you make it, right? But I don't really believe that. I think if you know, one of the things I received as advice in consulting when I was first in it was when someone asks you to do something, say yes first and
Mm,
then figure it out after, right? I think I carried that a lot with me throughout all my career. Sometimes I didn't have a choice because if you can't act, then you've got to look for something else, right? So when you're
mm,
backed into the corner, you've got to be brave. You got to step out there and don't be afraid to fail. You're stepping out into an unknown. Frankly, when I did the science to the business pivot, I had no idea. In fact, I actually forgot that there was the semester was starting in September until the week before and I had no idea what was going on. So I had to drive into Hamilton. I was like, okay, well, this is orientation week. But you have to be brave. Don't be afraid of failing and truly meaning that sometimes failure can completely freeze you, completely from head to toe. It's not
mhm,
just an internal sense of dread, but it's actually defining the fact that you made a stupid mistake, right? But don't be afraid of that. Be brave. Um, Number two is I think be resilient. There's a lot of difficulty, a lot of challenges with every single role that you take on, a lot of different anxieties, a lot of different sources of stress. But
mhm,
you really have to push through, and that whole idea of grit is so important in life, but especially in career because you kind of define in the sense your own destiny, right? But you can only do so if you really surround yourself with a tough armor to say, you know what, I'm going to persevere through this because I don't know what's happening up front, but I do know
mhm.
that I'll think about it and I'll figure it out when I get there.
Yeah.
I'd say the third thing and final thing is you got to work hard and you really have to do your homework around if you're trying to get to a CEO, you have to backtrack and say, here are the 3 or 4 things that I have to be really good at, right? And then I have to find
Mhm.
developing those skills. Otherwise, you'll never get there. So those,
Yeah.
be brave, be resilient, and be resourceful, or really
Yeah.
prepare hard for that.
Yeah, I love that advice here around being resourceful, especially I can totally relate to that. Especially I feel like when you're in consulting, oftentimes you may have never worked on a problem before or a project, and
Yeah.
you just have to figure it out. You just have to figure it out as you go. And this is something I do carry in my own business right now. Anytime I do something new, I'm always scared to do it, but I will do tons of research or talk to people or I'll experiment around things to figure things out. And I
Yeah.
just build my confidence along the way. Like I don't have everything figured out, but as long as I have an idea where I'm going,
Yeah.
I know I'll get there.
Diana, I have to say, well, that's the reason why I reached out to you, right? Because you did a really good job in December, and my PSA for you guys, everyone who's listening, is you got to go back and watch Diana's like the 2 days. You said in the post after that that you were anxious about that. We kind of talked about this before the call, but you didn't show it at all. You did an excellent job. So
Thank you.
people will be carried along by your momentum. I think I think you can only
Yeah.
inspire people if you generate momentum, right? You can't, because no
Yeah.
one's going to follow a bit of a dud, right?
Yes.
So anyway, you've
Yes.
done an excellent job. I've really
Thank
appreciated
you.
what you're doing. Yeah.
So you know what my motto is, and this is what I've been talking about, is make your why greater than your fears. Make your why greater than your fears. So even though I had fear of going live, people watching and all that, or even talking to people who are, have like great followers and all that, for me, it was my why was I wanted to make a difference in a big way.
Mm,
So I always went back to that whenever I felt like, oh, I was not good enough or have this imposter syndrome, I would go back, why am I doing this? Because I wanted to give back this holiday season. And that was like all I needed to get myself back up. It was just
right.
having that why that made a huge difference. So thank you, Andrea. That 2-day summit was extraordinary. Thank you for that. We had a
Yeah.
question from earlier from Kelly here, that I've gotten feedback that indicate I'm too confident or too vocal, too much in general. What advice do you have for that? Yeah, how to work through that?
My experience is that you can't be too good at or too something unless it's too something of the wrong thing. So I would say, get some feedback around what does it mean by you're too vocal, right? One of the things that is a turnoff, even as a coach, is if you come straight in and you have an opinion about everything, right? And as you, Diana, as you know, if you're listening to someone and caring about them, it's not really about what you've done before or kind of how you can relate to them, right? It's really about listening them, having them be too much for you, because
Mm,
then they'll really listen to you about, here's your thought out process about how you should do this. And I don't know the context of the question about, is it an interview? Is it sort of at the workplace, you're too larger than life? Sometimes people are intimidated by that too. So
mm,
a huge degree of success for anyone that you've ever seen in the news in the history of business has been self-awareness, just knowing where it is that you need to kind of work on and knowing what it is that you need to be more of. If you think
yeah.
that Jack Ma's and Jeff Bezos of the world are just, kind of bumbling through life, it's not true. They're intentionally portraying a specific, persona of themselves. And that comes from being self-aware. So I would
Hmm.
say kind of ask the question about what are you being too much of, right? Maybe it's the wrong thing. Number two is be more sort of reflective on, okay, where can I hold back some opinions on? And maybe just to know that you might be wrong, right? And last thing, Diane, I would say is, humility goes a lot further than bragging. Um, Bragging is a momentary blip. You might get a spike in viewership and whatever it is, but humility carries you throughout. It's a marathon. And the reason for that is people understand that humility is kind of driven by failure, right? If you're humble about something, it's probably because you kind of know what's happened before. So
Yeah.
I would just say that. I don't want to go on further than that, but that's
Yeah. Yeah, I would add on to this and it's like the yin and the yang approach. I see it as, maybe having gone through like the Eastern Western culture, like I say, you want to be confident, but yet also be humble. Right. And I think the balance, what I've learned is there's a difference between focusing me like about me center in a sense of like, look how awesome I am, how like I'm amazing I am. First is thinking from a service mindset of the impact that you've made. So it's something I really coach a lot of my clients on is really think about through your skills and talents and your expertise, how have you made a difference?
Right.
How have you made an impact? So when you focus on that, then the attention is less about you and it's more about the outcome of it.
Right.
So as an
Yeah.
example, like even just a quick example here, like I do share my wins as well, but I don't talk necessarily about like, look how amazing I am as a career coach. I focus more on, hey, look how proud I am about my clients and what they're doing and things that they're achieving here. So it's that simple switch as well when we're talking about our highlights. It doesn't have to be about you, but it could be about the impact that you're making that could shift that perception there.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and the why you're doing it is sometimes the only thing that gets you out of bed. There's so many times where I'm trying to pursue a client because I really feel that there's something that I could help them with, and you're just waiting for them, right, for the reply. And I joke with my wife that the two tabs or the 2 points on my screen on my computer that I click the most are my input, my Gmail refresh, and my Excel sheet that I use to track everything. There's two things there, and that clicking of the input button, whether you're looking for a job or whether you're looking for a client, like it's excruciatingly difficult sometimes.
Yeah.
But when it comes, it's like a wave of you're joyful because you get a chance to kind of do something, right? And of course, career. Of course, you and I left the corporate world because we want to be able to build a business, right? So there's that reality of things. So the yin and yang also applies to that, right? Helping, but also be able to kind of put food on the table, right? So, yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm going to move on the next question here is, and this is for those as well, we're looking to make a change. Like, how did you know when it was the right time to leave? What advice do you have for others who are either looking to make that pivot right now, or for those right now, I also hear those who are working who feel miserable but want to make a change because they feel bad of making a change during a pandemic? What advice you have for that?
Yeah, I would say sometimes it's upon you. So, meaning that you've been putting on sort of a personal, improvement plan, and that happens, and you kind of have to decide what to do. But the proactive approach is thinking about, okay, if you need 5 skills to succeed as a account manager, right? And it could be client relationship, could be selling, it could be, and you're really on 3 of them, okay? And you want to be an account manager, you have to think about, okay, those 2 other skills that I'm not too good at, prove them so that I can become an account manager or something like that. Now, try really hard to work on those 2 things, and you keep failing at them because you just can't generate enough momentum. I think about, okay, there's 2 things I can do. Number 1 is I can keep and trying to hit that wall, right, to get those skills perfected. Or I could say, you know what, I could do without those 2 skills, and I could focus on a career that focuses on the 3 good ones that I'm good at, right? And when you start thinking that way, then sometimes the conclusion is that maybe I need to switch. Maybe I need to go somewhere where it really draws on my strengths, right? Because I have a leg up already and I can build on that. So when you do that, sometimes it's a realization that maybe I should switch. Another point in time is sometimes you're very successful at something, but excuse me, that may not bring you fulfillment. You might be very making the company a lot of money, or you might be getting a lot of good performance reviews, but the internal part of you says, this is not my passion. This is not really what I wanted to do when I was younger. And when you say I wanted to be a firefighter when I was a kid, the question you have to ask is, what is it about a firefighter that you love to do, right? And if it's to solve a problem, then that's something that you need to think about. Maybe the job that you're doing right now, even though you're very successful at, doesn't allow you to solve a problem, right? Or if it's to save people, right? Maybe the job doesn't allow you to work with people to save them. And those are threads that kind of carry through in your life. And you might be very successful, but it still might be time for a change.
Yeah.
So it's always thinking about, like, what is it that drives me to go forward, to again, to your point, to add value, to add purpose to the community, the world, etc. It is. So it's a long-winded answer, but it's sort of like that's kind of the process that you have to keep, engaging in. So I hope that helps.
I mean, what I'm hearing too, I mean, ultimately it's going back to, you said, even though you can be successful at it, but how do you really feel? Do you feel fulfilled? Do you feel there's meaning? Do you feel it's purposeful? It's going back to looking for those answers as well. And maybe I'll add on like my own story. For the longest time, I've been doing recruiting as well to complement my career coaching business. And I've been really good at it in terms of doing like recruiting. And it is like a people business as well. But when I look at how I feel at the end of the day, where I don't feel as fulfilled compared to career coaching, and what I've learned and realized is that it has to go back to the fulfillment piece. And I think what I've learned is the difference is in recruiting, I feel more it's transactional because I have to reject more people than move forward with them. Whereas coaching for me, it's more about empowerment, moving forward, reaching your goals. And that was like my big aha, even though they're both similar in people business, helping people get jobs and all that, but the feeling is different for me. So it's looking back at like, what's really that feeling that you are going after out there?
Right. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's a really great example of the building up mindset versus the, kind of have to tell people that you're not going to do this, right? And every time you're rejected from something, I always say that there's a wall, and you can either keep banging your head against the wall and try to get through it, or you can think about a way to get around the wall, right? And oftentimes we're very ashamed to not be able to break through that wall because everyone else is telling you need to do that. But the wise thing for you is to not waste your time, maybe, and find a way to get around that, right? So I think your coaching would allow people to kind of enable to see that. And a good career coach is, has that good balance of, you need to try harder in this versus you think about another direction now, right? So
yeah, absolutely. So let's move on to another one that ties into this is in terms of evaluating the next opportunity, whether it's right fit for you, right? And if you can give some guidance on that, especially for those who think they can go into different directions. Like I have a client right now in HR, really great with like analysis work, but deep down, she knows she really wants to do more like soft skills type of work or working with people, such as like coaching or training. And she's evaluating multiple opportunities right now in very different directions. What advice do you have for that, for those who are looking to evaluate that next move there?
Well, sometimes it's a matter of getting affirmation. So if you get the right people around you to tell you that you're good at this, that helps a lot. And you have to ask, right? People aren't going to come right out and say, "Oh, you're my favorite person in the world next to my wife," because you need to figure out this. You have to ask them. You have to go back to your clients and go back to the people that you're interacting with and say, "Hey, what do you think? What comments do you have about how I can improve?" And that goes a long way. And a lot of times it's tweaking what you're doing to make sure that it was the right opportunity for you to take and the right decision to make. But you have to also set for yourself some metrics. So, for example, if you're starting out a career coaching journey, the milestones that you set have to be very realistic, right? So in my first year of launching this Elevate, I had set for myself some milestones that if I hit them, I would consider myself successful, okay? And it wasn't to make like six figures. It wasn't because it wasn't realistic to do that. But for me, it was like I wanted to teach. I wanted to be able to work with a large range of people for coaching, and I wanted to be able to speak. I was going to author, but I didn't have a whole lot to say. So one at a time, you kind of like thinking about these milestones. And if you can hit them, at least for yourself, you've made a win. You've kind of known that this is the way to go. That may not actually end up being in the long run, but at least in the short run, you've got to set those short time goals, to kind of affirm, right? So I think that's what you need to do as well.
Yeah, I like that. It's setting those milestones. One of the tests I like to do with my clients as well is, are you moving closer to where you want to go or further away from where you want to go? Right?
Yeah.
By doing this opportunity, is it actually helping you? Is it the launch pad to what's next? It doesn't have to be the dream job, but are you developing certain skills for that? That's a great question, a really easy way to look at that. Like I'll add on an example. Like when I decided to start my business, this was like over 10 years ago, 2009, that I decided to start my business. I knew I wanted to do it, but I was not ready yet to start. And I asked myself, what skills do I need to develop to kickstart my business?
Right.
So then the opportunity to recruit for a top MBA school, an executive MBA program, was my launch pad. So the way I told the story was I got to develop my public speaking skills, my one-on-one coaching skills as well, interviewing people. I got to travel and promote like sales and marketing as well. And so I told myself I would be developing these certain skills that's going to help me become a coach, speaker, and trainer.
Right.
So I knew when I took the opportunity that it would not be a forever job, but it would
Right.
be my launch pad to develop the skills. And it was my way to develop, conduct market research, because I
Right.
knew I wanted to work with high performers. So I told myself that
Right.
was my launch pad to conduct insights
And
in that role.
that's very smart. Yeah, that's very smart. If you can dovetail one thing into another, then it becomes sort of a mutual feeding
Yeah.
ground of kind of be able to sharpen you, right? Yeah, for sure. That's great.
Yeah, yeah. So for those who are listening, I'm curious to hear, like, for you to think about, like, this is like around like bridge job, right? Hashtag bridge job. Like, what could be a bridge job that could help you get to your, your bigger long-term career goal there? Okay, that's something to think about.
Right.
Awesome, amazing. So let's move into, this is something I know really important here that you want to hone in. It's like, why is it really important to learn from your failures or your struggles or challenges? How can that help launch one's career?
Yeah, I mean, failures is something that we all relate to, obviously. And I gave a TED Talk back in March, about a year ago, right before COVID hit and pandemic hit. For me, the way that I see it is that oftentimes we avoid failure, and when we fail, we try to kind of learn from that, right? We learn from it, and you try to kind of develop something out of that. My theory is that I like to seek after failures. I need to kind of very quickly see where my gaps are, because they tell me a lot about where my inner patterns might be. The tendency is that you tend to do well in things that you love to do, right? And that's just the way it is. If you love swimming, you're going to be tend to be better at swimming than you are at, croquet, whatever it is, right? So my thought about failure is that don't be afraid to seek after that, to find your weak spots, because then you can make a decision. You can say whether or not I want to invest in getting better at them. So you quickly kind of get up the ladder a lot quicker because you've addressed that wound already, right? Or if you look at the failure and like, okay, I'm doing this thing here, I'm getting all this feedback that I don't manage timelines well, I don't manage budgets very well. You know what? I couldn't care less about that. I looked for it, I found it, and you know what? That's not me anyway. So launching a career has a lot to, or pivoting has a lot to do with seeking after things that are impeding you so that you can make a decision about that, right? My whole journey from acting to, kind of where I am today was fraught with failures. I've been laid off before. I was told I couldn't act before. I was rejected from medical school 4 times, didn't do very well. My MCATs, the medical admission test. And so every time when you're brave to go in there, you know that you're going to find failures. So my advice to my clients is, let's take a step back and look at your overall career and see where the gap areas that you've had, because you'll start seeing patterns. And so failures allow them to make a decision. Should I go and take just the next role that comes up, right? The more of the same of what I do, which tends to be the case when you're looking for a job, right? You're going to gravitate towards the ones that fit you the most. But if you do more of the same and you haven't addressed your failures, then you're just kind of prolonging when it is that's going to hit you again. And the next time it hits, it might be pretty devastating. You might be, the peak of your game, you're making the most money, and all of a sudden, because you didn't address the things that you weren't good at, they come back to haunt you. So that's kind of the long and short of it, is that look for failures, because then you can address them right away. And a lot of times clients need that coaching to push them to, let me just give you a very quick snapshot of a conversation that I usually have. And you might have the same, right? First 10 minutes, right? Bragging. Okay, I've done this. Look at my CV. I've done, and at that point, I'm actually just like playing chess on my computer. I don't really listen, because the point is not about what I'm not a recruiter, and they know that. And that's not the starting place. I don't play chess. I'm just kidding. But then when I talk to them about value, I say, well, the value proposition piece is very important. What exactly do you bring to the table when you're talking about, like your contribution? And value is 3 things: your skills, your passion, and your impact, right? What are you good at? What do you love to do? Now, how are you going to give back? And if you can't define those for me, I'm not going to hire you. So taking a step back and say, okay, well, part of that is failure, right? Because when I fail at something, I'm not passionate about that. So that's what I tell them to do. And then about the 25, 30-minute mark is when the real conversation happens, right? When it's like, actually, Simeon, this is what's happened. And da 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 da, and that's when conversation comes up. So failure. We just talked about that. And that to me is very dear to my heart. As a key propeller.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, what I'm learning as I'm hearing this is it is going back to the self-awareness. Like by looking at the challenges or failures, what did you learn from the experience, or what really happened? How did you actually have to respond in, to come back, in terms of being stronger and all that? It's like the character piece. I'm hearing it's almost like the character development piece. It's not just by like, hey, like this is what makes me awesome, but like the value here is really looking at, hey, how does this make me a better person?
Yes. Yeah.
How is this?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a better person, redefined, not by how much you're making and not by your title or how many yachts that you have, but a better person as far as the impact part of it is you've got skills and you've got passion. Now, where in the world do you feel that you could be the most impactful? Because that's what's going to drive you up in the morning. It's not going to be that yacht or the cottage that you have to winterize. Come on, really? Like, it's amazing to me that you spend as much as you make. The worst savers, the worst people that are able to kind of think about this are the people who earn the most money. And so the impact and legacy aspect of, what their career has left behind is lost. And that's what you challenge, is that one of my pivot points was when my 7-year-old came to me when I was in consulting and asked me, Dad, what do you do? What do you do for a living? Because you're on the road. And I really didn't know what to say. So I gave her an analogy. I said, if you had a lemonade stand and you were trying to sell lemonade and another stand came up and sold orange juice, what would you do? And I was like, that's a stupid analogy, right? So if you can't explain in simple terms what you do and be proud of that as an impact, then you think about that, right? So, and it's not for everybody, Diana. Some people love doing that, and that's great. Power to them, right? In that case, you and I help them to get better at that, right? So
Yeah, for sure. So guys, for those who are listening, I want to challenge you to really take a time to reflect on these challenging moments or stories. Some people don't resonate with failures, like you can talk about failures. So that's why I have struggles here or challenges. Think about these difficult times in your life or work. How has it made you a stronger, better person? Right. One of the stories I used to share a lot, and I have started sharing more about it now, is how when I moved here to Canada all by myself when I was 16, whenever I went for interviews when I was younger, people were always so fascinated by it. They're like, how did you survive being here at age 16, have 3 part-time jobs and your own math tutoring business while taking care of your siblings? And so I think why people are fascinated by the story is more around the character building in terms of how were you able to manage to do all that, still get a degree and still make money and provide for your, siblings and all that. It's that character building that people are interested in there.
That's right. Yeah. It's a story.
So yeah, it's a story. Yeah. Yeah. So we're going to move on to the topic here now. I know there's so much to talk about. I want to hear from you guys. What's resonating with you? What questions do you have? If I just do a quick recap, I'm hearing one is definitely one of the self-awareness, to do more work around that, learn from, your challenges and struggles. A second piece here is really, listen to how you want to feel in terms of finding more fulfillment and joy and meaning and purpose. The third here is it's totally okay to pivot or find that bridge job to help you move closer to where you want to head there. So feel free to type in, what's resonating with you there. And let's move into Simeon, your topic in terms of defining your competitive edge. Okay. So first of all, let's talk about the challenges. What are the common challenges that you see that people have in identifying their unique value?
One of the challenges that I find is getting their mind wrapped around what passion means. And passion doesn't necessarily mean that it causes you to jump for joy every time you think about that. But the challenges for finding your unique value proposition has to do with, at the end of the day, sometimes I use the analogy of, your epitaph. When you die, what is it that you want people to say about you that you were the greatest at? I don't want them to say that he earned X number of degrees or he made this much money. Most people will say, you know what, it's actually about kind of enabling poverty to be able to kind of something like that, a cause, right? And from that point becomes passion. So getting people wrapped around that their career is not separate from their life, or their life goals, or their personal desires for impact, because all of us were, we're kind of given and created for a purpose, right? And we talked in a couple of years ago was this book about purpose driven life, but really connecting that work, that career goal with how does that feed into what it is that my legacy is about. That's difficult to do, very difficult to do. And that's the part where we spend a lot of time thinking about that, and we brainstorm about root causes, right? So if you like doing this, why do you like doing this? Who do you want to impact? How far would it look like before you would define success, right? So um, really, number one is understanding what passion means, and number two is saying, you know what, I need to give up sometimes some material things. I might need to make a little bit less money, but to do something more meaningful. And that's something that most of the world doesn't say to you, right? Doesn't make sense to do that. So I would say those two things is trying to convince people to see that passion is important, and then number two is that you might have to give up some things, because in the long run, the marathon is about endurance. It's about character building. It's about
Yeah.
wanting to leave behind something, a mark that really made a difference, right? So I'm not a psychotherapist. I'm not a psychologist. So I, in the end of the day, owe them a resume. Okay, this is my world. So I say to them, let's build towards that. Let's use the resume as a goalpost, right? To think about these things about passion and impact. So
Yeah, I love that. I am big on the passion piece. I know some people say not to go chase the passion, but I think when we can look at from a passion plus the impact
yeah,
standpoint and also the strengths piece, it's very powerful. It actually ties into the concept around ikigai that I was listening to yesterday. It's like having that reason for being, or your meaning of life, and having that
yeah,
purpose as
right,
well. Yeah, yeah.
for
So,
sure.
how can people go about defining their unique value proposition that gives them a competitive edge?
Yeah, well, I think quite simply, and it's not simple to do. Um, I'm just thinking about my story, right? So the common thread really was around two things: ideas. I loved exchanging ideas. And number two is listening and working with people. Okay. If I knew that those were my two core skills that I wanted to develop, then you put everything into that, right? Everything that you can do, take courses, learn from people, watch, people like yourself, Diana, and really good at that craft. When you focus on the cause, your competitiveness actually just comes out, because the reality is that in any given market, there's enough of a magnitude of market for people to kind of play in their own pockets, right? Even within coaching, there's different pockets of people and different people who are really good at that. So you start defining what your market is, what your competitive edge is in that area, just by focusing in on your passion. The two or three things for me: listening and exchanging ideas. So competitive edge sounds very like samurai, right? It sounds very gusto, but it really just means like you're competing against yourself, right? You're competing for the best edge that you can be of yourself. And I'll just very quick, it's personal story is my daughter is training to be a ballet dancer, and in a professional setting, she's 12, and the goal is not to win the competitions, right? We've all heard this before, is do your very best. But why do you do your very best, right? It's because then you're competing against yourself to be the very best competitive edge that you can be. Now, if it so happens that you're better than the other people, awesome, that's great. But if you're focusing in on doing your personal best and that's still not good enough, then you can think about maybe something else you can be more competitive at yourself at, right? And do that. Don't look around. Don't like, look at, compare yourself to other people, learn from other people, but resist that urge to say, the fear of missing out, right? And so just focus on yourself, get sharp at what you do, use your failures to drive that competitive edge, and just do your very best. And you know
Mm.
the topic of this discussion was very misleading, right? And because the point is that you're not competing against other people, you're competing against yourself. You want to be the sharpest person that you can be.
Oh,
So
I love that.
it dupes you.
Hashtag
Sorry.
hashtag personal best,
That's
right?
right.
Hashtagging to me is something for me, a word that aligns with me, to resonates with me, is like around mastery, right? In terms of mastering your own strengths, your skills, what you're good at, you continuously improve. And something I've been talking a lot about is improving that extra, that 1% every day, or, constantly asking yourself, how can you go the extra mile? To stretch out of your comfort zone
Right.
as well.
Right.
Like, you're not doing to necessarily to compete with anyone, but it's just to challenge yourself. Like, even for me, I'll tell you, as if you look at this, the live show, I could easily just show up without any of these creatives, right? Any of this at all, right? But for me, that's not fulfilling enough. Or I like to use my creativity as well to
Yes.
add in the branding and all that. And that's how I constantly stretch myself. Like, even just today, Chinese New Year, adding this little red to symbolize like Chinese New Year versus the yellow. And so it's just stretching yourself. No one's telling me to do this, but it's just like, so
Yes.
it's something I want to do, right? So
But
personal best, I actually love that.
and I
Yeah.
think, Anna, when you do that, inadvertently, you are encouraging other people to do their very best as well, because they should. Like, for example,
Mm.
I'm seeing you in red. I'm seeing you with these red envelopes, and I'm thinking, should I have done that? Because I'm not comparing against you, but I'm just saying, like, the question I have is, what drives you as Diana to do all this stuff? And then I think about, well, do I have a familiar passion that drives me to it? If I do, let's work on that, right? Let's really push into that. So I love it. I love it.
Yeah, yeah. And I want to add on to this because, in terms of, I think of on job search context, I know a lot of you are job seekers. I also like to add in the piece of really thinking it from an employer standpoint, right? So there's a piece of looking at, what you're really good at, your personal best. The other is really looking at what's really important to the employer. So that also adds in that marketing element, how you can really tailor your messages to
Right.
their needs as well. So as an example, I'm going to say an example, like it could be if someone, like if you're bilingual as an example, and a role requires someone to be bilingual, that could give you that edge because you speak another language as an
Mhm.
example. Or if this role requires you to do a lot of international type of work, and if you have international work experience, that is just that little thing that's going to make you, like, that top candidate there. That will
Right.
give you the edge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those are the skills, right? That you bring, that and that requires you to understand what environment you're walking into, right? The
Yeah.
worst thing is when you put something completely irrelevant on your resume, and you've just taken up real estate on the paper where you could have used it for something else that's much more impactful, right? Yeah, certainly.
Mhm.
I think there's an element there of thinking, okay, oftentimes, yeah, I've done this before, and it's not really, I don't see it as a big deal, but other people see it differently, right? So you do need to think about kind of, what you've done that's been really great, and you're kind of downplaying, the impact of that, but think about how other people might see it. They might see it as a huge
Yeah.
asset because it says something about your perseverance or your character or your curiosity and things like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. Stephanie said it's all about the employer. Yes. Even in my last week's talk with that Tiffany, she talked about the perception, how perception also matters, right? From the employer, and how sometimes things could be perceived differently from others. So let's
Yeah.
move on to the next question here is how to build your failures as much as success into your value proposition. Could you maybe give an example for this?
Yeah. Um, Building that. So remember, I said there's three things when I say the value proposition. When you show up, you're the quarterback, right? There's a skills. So what you just talked about earlier is, let's talk about them. What are you good at? Okay, that's the easy part. The second part is building. When you talk about building failure into developing your idea of passion, you're facing the fact that, okay, let's look at what role you're doing right now. Okay, and if you're doing a role like a sales account manager, or you're kind of working to become a consulting partner, you look at it and you objectively say, and with some feedback around, am I good at this, right? Am I really the best that I can be? Because I want to be the best that I can be. And if the feedback to yourself is that there are areas that you're just not really comfortable with, not that you're not hardworking at it, but just that no matter how hard you try, you can't really move the needle that much, right? That is a form of failure, right? No one, like I said in my TED Talk, no one sets out on a journey just to get stuck in the mud, right? When you look at that, now that begins to move towards this idea of what you fail at, you don't do as well at. And so the rebound effect of that is to say, well, then that means, can I look at the other skills and say, am I really good at those, or can I develop those? Am I interested in those, right? And so as you kind of think about kind of the two lines of failing, not doing so well, and doing really well, you've got a choice to make. Now, failure is there showing you, almost highlighting what you're good at. And you can say that at that point, do I bake in my value proposition by doing more of what I'm not good at? And again, that's a lot of different ways that you can do that. Or do you say that I can set that aside? I know myself, and now I'm going to build a career now that has a different definition of what needs to be done, right? So my skill sets are analytics, strategy, and people. Okay, that was in the context of being a consultant. These other two things are like sales, right? They're like sitting in meetings and like chairing them. I don't like these things. I'm not good at them, and I don't care. So then I have to pivot and say, what career allows me to strategy, listen, interact, and that became sort of a career coach. So I don't know if I completely addressed that question, but in my mind, at least, they're all interrelated. I hope I can sort of say that the dichotomy of one bounces off the other helps.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know,
that makes sense.
it'll come out, right? It'll come out in your confidence, right? And they talk about that 20-second elevator pitch. You've got to talk about the fact that here's what I'm good at, here's what I'm passionate about, and here's what I want to impact, right? And so, yeah, I mean, that's kind of as simple as that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, one thing I know, I love this because, like, as an example, like Amazon, they actually love asking interview questions around failures and challenges. And
Mm,
the belief is that by understanding how people overcame these things, it gives them a better sense of their character, the way they solve problems, how they would do things differently the next time as well. So there is value around that. I think it's a balance, right? It's having these balance of
yeah.
success and failures. But there is, and this is why I would say, from my experience of interview coaching, a
Mm,
lot of times behavioral questions are around challenges, conflict, difficult people, when things didn't go right, or a tight timeline. It's all to see how you deal with stress,
yeah,
problems,
sure.
challenges. And it's all to see your character at the end of the day. It's not just about the experience, but it's you as an individual of how do you rise to the occasion
Yeah,
as
yeah,
well.
for sure. Yeah, I
Yeah.
and there's lots of different ways of asking that same question. I'll just say one last thing, Diana, because I know we're running short on time, but um, it's this is both the realization and shame, but I was able to get third round interviews and admissions by three really good firms, right? And it's difficult to do that. And I'm not saying this, I'm telling you why. I'll set the stage for this. And I was able to get in the door for all these roles, and my roster of brands is huge. Okay, but at every single job, I was able to start well, and I didn't finish well, right? I never said that, oh, I became like a director or VP of strategy. I did. And I kept thinking, why is that? And so, when you think about kind of failures, my whole kind of, after I get in, the whole kind of downslide is a bit of a failure, right? So I'm not proud of that. And so you really have to know yourself. It's very discouraging when you have to think about that question about when you failed and what have you learned from it. My answer is that I failed almost at every role that I had, maybe a little bit kind of exaggeration, but I did. And what I learned from that is I'm really good at starting something, but I'm not really good at ending something, because what I need to
Mhm.
do to end something usually revolves around projects and like sitting in
Right.
meetings and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
So just my quick follow question. How would you then mitigate the concern from an employer? Like, obviously you probably wouldn't say it like that in an interview. But would employers be concerned about that, like in an interview before they decide to hire?
yeah, that's a really good question. No, I don't word it like that, but I
Of
do think
course.
that
Don't ever say that, guys. Start well, but don't end well.
no, 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 no. My point to saying that is that my
Yeah.
hope is that after coaching, by the time you
Yes.
get to the interview, it is the right job that you're interviewing for,
Yeah.
right? My hope is that, and I'm completely realistic to say, if you're without a job right now, you just need to get a job. You need to put food on the table.
Yeah.
I get that.
Hmm.
But when you are in the interview itself, hopefully it's already self-fulfilling. You've been in that position. You can answer now in a way that kind of relates to, overall, you still want to be in that position because you've done a lot of research and now you know what your strengths are that propel you to that interview. Um, how do you mitigate that? I mean, is simply to say that, whatever, I say simply not, but it's not simple. It's when you talk about failure, you've got to have the feedback, right? And so you've got to talk about, I didn't do so well here, and the situation was this, situation, complication, action, result, right? That framework.
Mhm.
Situation was here, and the complication was this, and I didn't do this quite well, but I got feedback, and I learned from that feedback, and I tried harder to be my competitive best next time I did that, right? You don't have to finish off by saying you did or you didn't do well, but you can certainly say that that was your journey. And so whenever I answer that question, I try to be very specific about a specific failure that I had, but I also try to position it in the form of a journey. I'm growing in this area.
The
I haven't
growth.
solved it yet. I'm on the pilgrimage there, right? I'll never solve some of the issues that I have until I die. But position it as a journey that you're willing to grow, and you take a lot of feedback. And
Yeah.
if you've got win stories, share them. That's great.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a very important lesson, actually, because employers do want to hire people who have that growth mindset, who have the curious mindset, who want to continue to learn and grow. So you can
Right.
position that, and to me, also that shows the humbleness as well, too, that you're still here to learn. You're not perfect, right? You're just figuring out, and as all of us, being humans as well. So I just got a couple more questions, and we'll be wrapping up here. But I want to hear from you guys. What is your biggest takeaway so far here? This has been a really juicy conversation. So just to wrap up with a two more question here, Simeon, is what's your advice if someone wants to pivot into a different industry or start a new career? How to brand and reposition themselves?
Yeah, start by building a foundation where you are right now. And what that means is try to set up some sort of infrastructure or framework that you're going to build off of eventually, right? So it's like you own a house and you're trying to you want to build a cottage, right? And you want to you're retiring and you want to go to that cottage. You wouldn't sell the house and immediately just like start building and finding the materials, right? You're already doing the research, you're figuring out what that's going to look like. You might have, some sort of sketch around in your mind about what that new career looks like. Do some research around who your target market might look like. Who are you trying to reach out to? A really big question that we learn in business school is, what problem are you trying to solve, right? And that's an important
Yes.
piece of that. So start building the foundation. My mom always said that that's the back burner piece, that when you build that foundation, when the time comes, you're ready to go.
Mm.
So do your research, make sure that that foundation is there. Secondly is try to find other people in your community who have done something similar and try to
Mm.
learn from their mistakes, right? And a friend of mine has always said, never learn from your own mistakes. Learn from other people's mistakes. So you want to listen. One of the first conversations I ever had when I started this journey was I was trying to write a book, and I sat down with this person who's a sort of a body language expert, and he was just willing to give half an hour of his time. And he said, listen, don't go the route of the author because you'll never get there. And when it is, it's like maybe 2 weeks and then you're off the charts. And that was the best, hey, publisher is great. I'm just not that, right? So get advice from people who have done something similar. The
Mhm.
third final thing is when you're ready to step out, go all in, right?
Mm.
You have to go all in. And unless your back is against the wall and you're forced to be creative in order to get the clients that you need to get to, you're not going to do it. You're always going to have, okay, I've got a salary coming in 2 weeks, I'm not going to follow up with this call. But it's those things that get you networking, get your momentum, get you building. So go all in, right? So build a framework, get subject matter experts and get their advice and go all in when you're ready to go.
Amazing. I love this. I'm a big fan of going all in. Like I call it take massive action. Don't tiptoe or be half foot in, half foot out. And I have found, even my experience, when I work with clients who are working and thinking like, oh, I'll just test out the water to see what the market is like, or I'll just see what opportunities are out there. It takes a very, very long time and they don't make much progress. And it's because
Yeah.
their heart is not into it. So
Yeah.
a big part is you have to decide and commit and then take massive action to really make things happen if you really want to go after the dreams and goals. It's not just like, we'll see if someone presents me an opportunity. It doesn't work that way.
Right. Exactly. You have to create your
Yeah.
own opportunity. That's right. Yeah.
Exactly. Creating your
Be afraid to fail for sure.
Exactly. Absolutely. And then just so quickly as well, too, is how to translate that into the branding and marketing and resume. I know this is like a big load question, but if you have some quick tips of what people can walk away from, like now that they learn about this value prop and how do I really apply it to everything else here?
Yeah. So once you define your value proposition in loose terms, your skills, your passion, your impact, go back and do a very simple matrix plot. You want to go back to all of your roles that you've ever done from day one, and you want to break that down into attributes. So what was it that I needed to do to succeed here, right? If I was given like a 2-week project and I need to build a business case, well, I needed to have good financial skills. I needed to be able to understand what capital costs, right? I need to all these things. When you do that matrix planning and then you align that with what your value proposition was, skills that you want to develop, remember that, and you want to be good at, then you start thinking, well, I want to tell the story now in my resume that highlights my value proposition. So pick and choose in those roles what you decide to put on your resume. And what you're going to find, it's going to pivot from a straight A report card that you bring to your guidance counselor. Remember those? And but your guidance counselor is going to be able to say, but you're a physics person, aren't you? Or you're a human resource person, aren't you? You're still really good at these things. You're being your own guidance counselor. So break down your roles into what the skills were needed to do that. Think about what projects that you did that aren't on that role right now, but you were really proud of, right? Sometimes they're like 2 or 3 week, sort of side projects, but hey, that's great. It worked. I did a pilot project, sold stuff. You got to list those out. And so when you match them against your skills, that's when you start to shape your resume to tell those stories. Then you're going to have a resume that's got a column, right? I'm a person who loves to do this and this. The issue there is you got to think about, are you willing to take that risk? Because you're kind of putting all your eggs in one basket, aren't you? Right? You're kind of saying that I haven't done all these things as a generalist. I really want to do these things. So that's a risk that you have to take, but it's well worth it if that's who you are. And that's what's going to bring you, excitement and fulfillment. So I hope that makes sense. The resume looks very different after you think about value proposition. It should look very different.
Yeah. I love it. I mean, the takeaway, and this is really similar to what I do too, is like ultimately going back to self-awareness, because when you know yourself, you know how to better communicate with greater confidence and more an compelling way as well, right? So to me, everything you're teaching today, it does tie back to personal branding, right? Because personal branding is looking from a marketing sense of who you are, what you have to offer, what you're known for. Yeah. And when you have that, then the way you sprinkle through your resume messages, your LinkedIn messages, your elevator pitch, all that's going to be very consistent because people can tell it's well thought out.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
And they're not confused. It's very clear that they may not have any sort of, use for you right now, but you've been true to yourself. Like you've been building your own career path for yourself now, and it's never too late to start. That's the good thing about that.
Yeah. Being true to yourself. That is so key. I have to tell you, I mean, I've been doing coaching for 10 years now. And like to this day, my first employer that I left over 10 years ago, I still work with clients there. People still refer me clients because of my reputation for and passion for people development and helping people reach their full potential. And
that's great.
And it's amazing, right? It's part of like that, your brand of who you are, that people just know this is what you do. Yeah, and I'm so grateful for that. That's part of the branding of knowing your passion and your strengths and impact there.
If you realize, Diana, that means in the past 10 years, there's been a thread of yourself that hasn't changed, right? And people appreciate that, right? If you're changing, you haven't found that, then it's hard for people to know when to go to you for certain things. So there's something about what you have that's a secret sauce for yourself that's maintained a certain level of, reliability that people want to come back to you. So that's awesome. That's great.
Yeah, thank you. So guys, this is a great exercise. I want to challenge you guys to think about this weekend. Do some self-awareness exercise, do this passion, inventory, impact, strengths, do all that, right? Create a vision board, whatever that is. Ask for feedback. That's a great way to help you move forward in your career there. So Simeon, where can people find you? I'm going to put it up here.
The easiest way is I have a LinkedIn profile, so you can look me up there. But I have a website also. So my company is called elevate.strategy.com. So essentially you spell the whole thing out. Don't do elevate.strategy.com. It doesn't work that way. So it's elevate and then dot as in DOT, strategy as in strategies. That's one word.com. And that's where my website is. And that's kind of where I talk about my philosophy and my services and everything else like that. I also gave a TED Talk last March, which I would highly encourage you if you have time.
Yes.
17 minutes of your life that you may get back or you may never get back, but it really highlights a lot of the conversation that you and I, Diana, had today about. I guess there was a need for people to hear that, and that's why they allowed me to speak on the stage of TEDx. So I would encourage you to listen to that. Any of you who are interested in that, but yeah, I think other than that, just we're all accessible, right, Diana? We've like a phone call away.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank
reach
you. Yeah, Stephanie said this is just what I needed. So they said thank you here. Amazing. Guys, I highly recommend checking out the TED Talk. I watched it and I had to message Simeon right afterwards. And a little fun fact, Simeon was in a movie with Jackie Chan
Yeah.
back in the day, my idol.
Yeah, and if you want to find out the exact details of what I did, reach out to me. I'll tell you what I did with Jackie Chan. Wasn't that glamorous? But
that is pretty cool, I have to say. Like now that's what I remember. But this is something was interesting, what caught my attention, I have to tell you as a takeaway too, is like the fun facts about you, like interesting things about you that you've done in your life that could also make you stand out, like when you go for an interview, right? It doesn't have to just be all professional experience, but it could be those little things of make up you, of who you
Right.
are, that makes you interesting and fascinating.
yeah, and you know what the top 3 are in my resume? Number 1 is pebble skipping. So pebble skipping is a passion of mine. I have a personal record of 10 skips. My wife will say no, but it is, that's my perception of reality. The second thing is I was in one with Jack Lee and also Jackie Chan and also Jet Li. So 2 movies.
What?
And, yeah.
Jet Li! Oh my goodness!
Yeah.
Look, Kamara's like, that's so badass. I love Jackie Chan.
Yeah, no, so whatever. We'll talk later, Diana. And then the third thing is that I'm an MMA a lover. I love MMA. I love MMA. I love chess, and there's similarities between fighting and chess. Yeah, there's a strategy there that is a lot more than meets the eye. So anyway, yeah,
MMA. So that's MMA. That's the Muay Thai. Is that what it is?
That's the mixed martial arts. That's the UFC.
Oh, mixed. Oh my goodness!
Yeah, the violent stuff that people don't.
Mixed martial arts, and you do the Muay Thai, like the boxing as well.
Yes, and chess. I'm a rated player.
Oh my goodness!
Here,
I just learned so much about you in the last few minutes here.
Yeah, Diana, they're all about strategy. They're all very similar to everything. It's just different. Anyway, it's great. Yeah.
Jet Li, I know. Kamar's like, what? I know. I'm like, I want to hear the stories now. This is so cool. What a great way to end this.
Yeah.
See, look, Denise, I can't believe you downplay Jet Li.
Okay, Diana, last thing, okay? This was so important. And again, like I tell people about the achievements sort of personal thing and how learning grade 10 piano and traveling the world is just not there. It's so important that I put down Jackie Chan. The first month I was at Deloitte, none of the partners knew my name. They just said, "You're that Jackie Chan guy." And I would be walking down the hallway not knowing who anybody was. "Hey, Jackie Chan, do you want to go on this project?" And I mean, is it kind of, I don't think it's racist. I think it's legit. It's on my resume.
Right.
But,
right.
Hey, I mean, if that got me an interview and got in, hey, to go by all means.
The memorability. Yeah, right, of what people associate with in terms of, but I think it's a cool factor, right? Is that people see that's really cool that you've done that. It's similar to when I tell people, like, I've done Walking on Fire like 2 times, and people like, what did you do? How did you do that? But I think yours is much more cooler than mine. The Jet Li, Jackie Chan.
People just, hey, listen, it's all, we're all people, right? Everything is about people, and it's all psychology. It's all how you communicate yourself and get compelling story, right? It's all about that. And it's not a machine. Like at the end of the day, we're people, right? We're people reviewing other people's stories. So let's get that right. And I love, you guys are doing such a great job. Like Kamara, I follow you as well, and it's got a lot to learn from you guys. So yeah, great. Thank you for having me, Dana. It's really
My pleasure. This was so fun to do this together. And thank you so much for all of you for being here. It's amazing. I love seeing you guys in comments. This has been so fun in the making. So, and I'm so grateful I'm meeting amazing right now, like coaches, career experts, leadership experts I'll be bringing on in the coming months. So thank you so much, Simeon. And let me just wrap up here with what's next. So yeah, so guys, so what's happening next week? So I'm going to be taking some time off, with the Chinese New Year today. I'm going to be celebrating, with my family here. And I can't believe it's also Valentine's Day and then like Family Day here in Canada on Monday. So it's an extra long weekend. I'm going to really be intentional of minimizing my screen time there and really be present for my family. But next week, we have another show with Tony Abub, where we're going to talk about confident video communications. And the focus is going to really help you elevate your communication presence virtually. We're going to talk about some tips and strategies as well. So make sure you sign up for that on my website at www.mymarkability.com/events. And then the week after, we have Andrea Schwartz, where we're going to be talking about awakening your career potential. So this is really going into also unlocking your best self there. So I recommend for you to check that out as well. It's going to be a very fun show the rest of this month. And then next month, I'm still planning next month for the theme there, but International Women's Day is in March. I'm also planning a series of women of color speakers who are going to come on to talk to me. I'm going to have at least 5 speakers to talk the week of International Women's Week. So that would be March 12th there. So stay tuned. I've got lots of things planned. And thank you so much for supporting. This has been so fun. Thank you so much for being here. And I can't wait to see you guys soon. Take care.